So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, the official topic is how can you be moral with God?
Oh.
But, we get a lot of people asking, how can you be moral without God? And God is the basis of our morality. And so, and atheists are assumed to lack a moral foundation. So, and atheists are mistrusted because of this. And so this sort of thing needs to be addressed. So the reasoning of theists, I think, is that moral laws require a lawgiver. And the lawgiver is the flying spaghetti monster. No, is God. By definition. And God is also the source of absolute morality and is also the divine judge. And good will be rewarded and bad will be punished in the afterlife sometime in the grand and glorious future, and justice will prevail. And those without God are morally adrift, or worse. They worship the devil or something. So that's kind of the reasoning or pseudo-reasoning that goes on. I want to address these claims and then flip the question around and ask, how can you be moral with God? So that's what I'd like to do today. And as usual, I have far more material, so I'm going to try to hit the good stuff, the really good stuff, or the new stuff first. But the other topics are also important. So anyway, so we'll see how far we get. Maybe we'll get some callers. So the problems with this reasoning that I just proposed is there is no basis given for our moral sense coming from outside of humanity. So why would you assume that our moral sense has to come from somewhere else? So that's one question that never seems to be answered. There's no evidence given for the existence of God or gods. Nobody can agree on what God is, what his name is, how many there are, what sex is it, what a divine morality looks like, right? So we have various holy books, but they're conflicting. They say different things. They're from different traditions. They make conflicting statements within them. They are subject to interpretation, so somebody can read one thing one way and read another thing another way. I've called the Bible a Rorschach test for the morally challenged, meaning you can find anything you want in there and justify pretty much anything you want, and it's all true. Okay, and we're going to hit that a little bit. So there's no evidence for this divine justice, and there's no evidence for good and evil as things, as tangible things, or beings with little horns and angel halos or whatever, pulling us in various directions, sitting on our shoulders, that sort of thing. There's no evidence that atheists are less moral than anyone else. All right, there's secular countries in Europe, they're largely secular, and they get it done pretty well. We can talk about that in more detail. So in reality, our morality is based on the fact that we share the same environment, we share the same ability to reason, we share the same need to survive, reproduce, grow. We have largely the same DNA, the same sort of physical makeup. We have many of the same instincts, drives, capabilities. We're social animals. And so morality is a result of the fact that we are social animals. We have to cooperate to survive and do well. There's a lot of benefit to our species to survive, to work together to survive, right? If you are ostracized from a society, you are back down to getting your own food, building your own shelter, and these sorts of things. Here we can trade our work for, in my case, computer work, which I enjoy doing, for things that I can't do very well or I don't enjoy doing, of having a house and driving around in a car and these sorts of things. So, so we're much better off as a society, and so morality is the sort of price we pay to be part of that society. We want to. Morality is inherently human, though it can be extended to how we treat other species. So one way to think about morality as being inherently human is just ask yourself, if there weren't any humans, would there be any need for morality? Right? That's one question you can answer yourself. If there's just one human, I don't think there's any need for morality. I think morality has to do with how we treat each other, how one human treats another, how one human treats an animal of another species, that sort of thing. So atheist morality, or the morality that atheists subscribe to, which is really the morality that everybody subscribes to, even though they attribute it to God, is that we all have the ability to feel compassion for others, right? We have that innate ability that is part of our wiring, That's part of our ability to reason about others' predicaments and things. We have the ability to reason in general. We have the ability to reason about the consequences of our actions. And we effectively treat others how we would like to be treated. I mean, this is the sort of foundation of morality. And this has been around long before Jesus. Confucius had a statement to this effect 500 years before, but it's been around a long time. So, and as a result, others can treat us back how we treat them. So there's this notion of building up reputation, right? Because if I treat you badly, you're going to remember that and stay away from me, right? Or if I, go off and murder somebody, people are going to come after me because they don't want to be murdered. So there's the notion of reputation and responsibility. So for me, morality has to do with reason, responsibility, and compassion. Those are what I think are the kind of main things, and these things are the moral foundation. There's no God there. God is absent from that. And in fact, our laws are based on a secular morality. We as humans work together and create a society, and abiding by those laws is the price we pay to participate and to get the benefits of that society. So today I want to turn the question around. How can you be moral with God, right? Or apparently God is an afterthought, is a bag on the side that's not necessary. I have no need of that hypothesis, apparently. So we can ditch it. We don't need it. So the problems I see with supernatural moralities is what I want to hopefully hit today, but I may not get to all the topics because I got a lot of material here. One I want to talk about is that God-based moralities are effectively con games. Okay, so once you put God in there, you are in the realm of con games. Is as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to demonstrate that today. The second point is that God creates a conflict of interest with human needs. So God's more powerful, therefore God's more important. Therefore humans are less important, and therefore you're sacrificing sort of the human participation in human things to please your God. The third thing is religions are based on a broken model of the world, which many of these things I've hit before. And these three things are not mutually exclusive. In fact, you can see in many of the examples that come up, you can see shades of both of these things. So to get to the instinct thing, just to mention very briefly, we have studies being done on morality and where it comes from and what parts of the brain are involved with moral decision making. We have studies that look at chimpanzees and other higher primates to see that they have a notion of altruism and a notion of fairness and a notion of compassion for each other, and this can be demonstrated, and there's a number of books on that. Let me give you a little quick pointers. Mark Hauser wrote a book called The Moral Minds that says that the brain is genetically shaped mechanism for acquiring moral rules, and there's a notion of a universal moral grammar, much like our innate ability to handle and process language. There's another book called Primates and Philosophers from primatologist Franz de Waal. So those are some things. But I just want to mention that we have a lot of evidence that morality is both biological and both innate. Both things are true, that they come from our background. So let's talk about God as con games. Let me just give you an example of what I mean here. There's this notion of what I call the sin scam. Okay, so in secular morality, if I harm Matt, if I do something bad to Matt,
I'm going to take you out.
You're going to take me out. Okay. Well, there's this notion that the perpetrator redresses the harm, that I have to pay a penalty somehow, right? Either I reimburse you for the harm I've done, or I go to jail for the harm I've done, or these sorts of things. And I sort of have to pay for the harm I've caused you, right? So it's largely a trade of some weird sense between the perpetrator and the victim,
right.
Okay? With religion, if I harm Matt, I've committed a sin against God, okay? And therefore, the perpetrator has to pay the church, okay? I have to pay the church because that's who I've wronged. The victim is expected to forgive me. And so the net result is that the church makes money off of my crime to you. So this is what I call the sin scam. So this is just scratching the surface of the con games. So before we talk about where this con game stuff comes from, let me present to you a kind of tongue-in-cheek mathematical proof that God created the universe and Christianity is true. Thank you, guys. So yeah, I really have a mathematical proof here that God created the universe and Christianity is true. So let me go through it real quick. God is transcendent, like infinity. So God is very much like infinity. How can we understand God? Well, if God is infinity, it's very much like God is infinite and unknowable. It's like having something without the ability to comprehend it, or 1 divided by 0. Okay, so that's another way of describing infinity. So in the beginning, before the universe was created, there was nothing, and nothing is nothing, and nothing from nothing comes nothing comes nothing. So it just keeps going on and on. So, but when we have God acting on the nothingness, right, we can multiply both sides by God, right, and so that's like God acting on the nothingness. We can expand this expression, God is 1 over 0. Okay, I'm just doing mathematical operations here. We're rearranging the numerators on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, we know that anything times 0 is 0. On the right-hand side, anything divided by anything is 1. So we effectively end up with 0 equals 1, or symbolically, God created the universe. Okay, so God created the universe. So my first statement has been proven true. If God created the universe and the sun is just as powerful as the God, and you say, well, you know, you just got to believe, or you got to believe, or I am what I am, or some other true statement, and throw it in, and we add these all together, we get 1 equals 3, and so we have the notion that the Trinity is true, right? That God is exactly the same as God, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. We got Casper there as the Holy Ghost. Isn't that great? Okay, so God created the universe, and Christianity is true. Okay, thank you, guys. That's enough for the slides. Okay, hopefully you found that amusing. I find it amusing. So I've proved that God created the universe. Now, the fallacy in that proof I just gave is that God, like infinity, which are both concepts in people's minds, can do any work in the real world. That's the logical fallacy in both my little proof and in the religions, right? That God cannot do any work in the real world because it's imaginary, okay? So claims about God are usually backed up with this logical fallacy of special pleading. You have to specially plead God into existence. So God is so powerful that we can't detect him, or God is everywhere but he exists nowhere, we can't find him, or he's so intelligent that we can't comprehend anything at all about God, or he's so fat that we can't get our minds around him, or he plays peekaboo so well that we can't find him. You know, these sorts of things.
So imaginary, he must be real.
Right, right. So these are all examples of special pleading, that you assume that this thing that you're trying to prove exists has a certain property that prevents you from knowing it exists.
See, that's actually one of my favorite proofs, though, is because the ontological argument that ends up saying that God exists because it's more perfect to exist than not to exist.
Right.
And so we've
right.
defined God as being the most perfect being. However, which being is more powerful? The being who can create worlds and save your sins, or the being that can do that while simultaneously not existing? I'd say the one that doesn't exist is more powerful, and therefore God doesn't exist.
I like that. So I think that's the point here is first off, these are all just word games to try to make you believe something. And religions admit this because they say, oh, well, you got to have faith, right? There's no reason here. You got to have faith.
Welcome to the grand mystery, all the mysteries of mystery, of the mystery of the birth and the death. They're answering mysteries with mysteries.
Right, right. And so this gets to the point, and you've sort of already made it, and that is that once you accept these logical fallacies as true, you can come up with anything you want.
Sure.
So you used it and went left on it, right? And that's perfectly valid. It's just as valid as what the theists are doing. Right?
Oh, no. Mine's true.
Okay. So in mathematics, we call this the property of soundness, right? That once you have a logical system with a falsehood in it, whatever you derive from that is effectively cannot be guaranteed as true anymore. The system is considered unsound. So by analogy, if you apply this to a morality system of morality based on this belief, you end up being able to prove anything you want. Anything you want at all is justified in a morality where is based on logical fallacies. So God is absolutely a logical fallacy and these sorts of things. So if anything is true, then anything is religiously justifiable, but the ends tend to benefit the purveyor, right? Have you ever noticed that? How God is invoked to do whatever, but it always benefits the speaker.
The other part of the con game thing with regard to religion is that these religions have invented things and labeled them as sins, even though there's often no harm to anybody else. This idea of thought crime to make you feel guilty for doubting or lusting or any of these other things. Even if you didn't act upon it, you've still committed this sin, and therefore you owe penance, or you need to pay for an indulgence, or you need to apologize to God and whatever.
Right.
So
right.
yeah,
keep you jumping.
There's a two-stage con there.
Right. So religious morality is the opposite of absolute morality. It's really arbitrary. It's completely arbitrary. So it is actually true. With God, all things are possible, right? Because when you assume a falsehood, all things are possible from that. All things are true, right? So all things can be rationalized with God. So if you want to kill, you make a claim that God is on your side, or you want to. We'll take the caller in a minute. If you want to, claim that you hear voices from God, you can go off and kill. Both Bush and Hitler have used that tactic. If you want to have sex with 16-year-olds, you become involved with the Mormon cult or the Catholic Church, one or the other.
16's way too old for those guys.
Way too old for those guys, okay. If you want to make some serious money, preach the prosperity gospel. If you want to use the Bible, you can use it to justify genocide, torture, abuse of children, lies and propaganda, thievery, oppression, abortion even. You can use it, How about eating children? Let's use the Bible to advocate eating children. Well, Christ is supposed to have been childlike, right? That's one of the phrases in the Bible, right? Catholics allegedly eat the body and blood of Christ, so why not eat children? Isn't that more godlike than eating crackers? So yeah, you can justify anything you want with God. So I'm sure a lot of callers are saying, whoa, that's not my religion, I don't believe that. That might be true. So, you might be believing, since belief in God doesn't imply anything at all, it implies everything, you might be just relying on your secular morality to arrive at your conclusions and attributing it to God. So God is effectively stealing. Or you're maybe having the fallacy of confirmation bias, where you say, well, I'm going to ignore all the bad stuff because I don't understand it or whatever, and just claim the good stuff. And so really what's going on here with religious morality is it's mind games, right? It's mind games of believing falsehoods at the onset, and then the consequences of that. God is very convenient because people won't challenge God generally. They won't stand up and say that makes no sense. Atheists try to do that, and we're vilified for doing that. And then you also have other logical fallacies like confirmation bias and so on. So this is my first topic. We have a caller, so this is a good time to maybe switch to the caller.
Is it Alan?
Yeah.
How you doing, Alan?
I'm doing great. I love your show. I'm calling from Houston, Texas.
Oh,
okay.
Wow. So you didn't mind being on hold nearly so much.
Yeah. My question is, why do y'all think people that aren't religious don't believe in a God? Once they have a child, they start believing in him.
I don't know that to be true. Do you have evidence that happens? Because we have a lot of parents in our group.
I have like a friend, our friends in general that they don't go to church or anything, right. But then they have a kid, and then that's what they tell me. They're like, well, as soon as you have a kid, then maybe you'll understand.
I've had a friend or two of mine tell me that too, they always believed, but the thing that was the clincher for them was the moment that their child was born and they looked into their child's eyes and they're just, overwhelmed with their love for their new child, and it's a miracle, quote unquote. So this ends up being kind of the linchpin that seals up their belief. I can't say that they're wrong because I don't have any kids, but I can say that I have a good understanding of where kids come from, and it's not a miracle. You actually have to have sex or find some method of conception. I can understand that people would immediately fall in love with their own children. That's a biological imperative. We wouldn't be here if it didn't happen. But I think what they're doing is conflating things that they don't understand and feelings that are overwhelming into a completely unjustified metaphysical claim. I can't imagine, no matter how much I possibly loved anything, that thing or my love for that thing in no way constitutes proof that a God exists. You just can't get from A to B.
And I would add that we have a lot of atheist parents in this group that for which that didn't happen. So I don't know how prevalent this thing is that you're claiming. It might have some anecdotal things, but I wouldn't say it's a general trend or anything.
Okay.
I would doubt that.
Okay. Well, that's all I had for you.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks for your
Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
We need to actually turn that up just a smidgen next time. But
So, maybe people buy into the notion that religion helps children. A lot of religions are very family-oriented, and and that's a good thing, I guess, right? And so they may be looking out for support for their family and raising children and giving them a relatively wholesome environment.
Yeah.
All of those things are good.
I'm always kind of reluctant to jump in on this as somebody who doesn't have any kids, but I do know people have kids. I haven't grown up in a vacuum, and I was a kid, and I have friends who have kids, and I have my brother has kids. I can tell you that when somebody has their first kid, from what I've seen, they're freaking terrified.
They go a little crazy for a while, yeah.
They've just taken the responsibility for this life, and the moment it's born, one thing that happens is the realization that, holy crap, what did I do? I'm now responsible for another life. And I'm not equipped for that. I don't have all the answers. And then sometimes it's better, or it's seen as better to perhaps go for the easy answers. So the idea, I know atheist parents who have, for fear of, they don't want to raise an atheist child any more than they want to raise a Christian child. So they'd like to be able to do kind of a comparative religions, an introduction to all religions. But they also allow their kids to go to church with relatives.
With older kids, right?
Young kids.
Okay.
To go to church with relatives. If grandma comes and wants to take little Johnny to church, then they let them go. It's
Well, I
partially
can't
a freedom
imagine
thing.
that church at all would be meaningful until you're like either 5
It's
or 6
fun.
or maybe even. It's fun?
It's fun.
Well, it's fun to be with the family and do something that they're doing.
I can tell you when
very
I was
much
little,
part of being a kid, right?
when I was little, church was fun. Right down to the church bus stopping at McDonald's for cheeseburgers for everybody on the way back.
Kid bait, huh?
You get to sing and dance and play games and color, and it's like, and everybody there is on the same page.
So maybe the answer is free daycare, right?
I think there's a lot of things. There's
for the price of your tithe or whatever, right?
There's certainly an aspect where they could just be overwhelmed and ready to glom onto anything that seems to provide comfort, reassurance, even if they don't necessarily believe what's behind it. The kind of community and camaraderie there, especially if you start going to daycares or going to events with other people in your neighborhood who've just recently have kids. I could see them easily ending up, going to church and other social events with them. So
yeah. Well, we're live today, April 20th. We can put up the phone number, guys. If we have callers that would like to call in, feel free to. Otherwise, I guess I can just hit another little topic here.
Sure. There's somebody on hold, but
okay.
we don't know who.
Just call. Oh, go for it if you want.
Okay.